Day 4 of the trial for the Bellevue man accused of murdering his 2 children. That tops our headlines here on a Friday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on First at 3. I'm Dave Zavolinsky. There were a number of rules in order for a camera to be allowed inside of the courtroom for the entirety of this trial. Well, one of those rules was violated, and the judge today ordered the camera to be turned off. On the stand today, a California detective. The defense asked about the initial interrogation. The detective testified that during the process, Price said his children, quote, "are my world." A detective from Bellevue also took the stand. He testified that he tried to get information about how the children died, but said Price did not answer. The detective described Price as answering his questions quickly when they were not about the kids, but when he was asked about the children, his answers came out much slower. The detective also said Price told him he deserved to go to prison and serve time, saying he wanted to be caught. We will, of course, provide updates throughout the rest of the day as court allows.